Guide to abandoned ship.
Oh no!
Here we go.
Can I persuade you to join us for a drink? It's a tradition.
Here, here.
Jar Jar, homie, my main man, quickly. Before the Separatists attack, get into the escape pod.
Hey! This is escape, then we're the pod.
Welcome back to Star Wars Escape Pod. I'm your host, Josh, and we have a great chat all about the season finale, part 1 of The Bad Batch. Returning to Kamino, myself and Blake, your hosts of the show, will break this episode down to the letter. We're going to get into all the nitty-gritty events, speculation, what happened, things we noticed, making connections to the rest of the saga and other Star Wars shows. And if you've never tuned into the show before, welcome to Star Wars Escape Pod.
Another happy landing.
We are back in the escape pod, once again floating through space. Welcome back, Blake.
Here am I sitting in a tin can. Dude, did we call it or did we call it?
Man, we called the crap out of that episode.
Yeah,
I mean, like all those theories that we had, it's
coming
like
together.
They're all coming together now. Yeah.
It's true. Like, I gotta give you props. You said orbital bombardment, and I said
yeah. You
Empire.
got props to the droid. Props to the droid.
Thank
You're
you, sir.
convinced.
Thank you. I knew. Well, why else would he be there? There had to be a reason.
I know,
And
right?
He's still with them. So
Right.
I think something next episode, he's gonna be directly involved with stuff.
Right. It's kind of I guess I find it kind of funny that he's now with and helping Echo and his friends, whereas the last time we saw him, he was
Helping
with Fives.
Yeah.
Right. So it's an interesting little connection there that it's the same droid, and if anyone is curious about what droid we're talking about, it's AZI 345-211-89624649872137. That's his name.
That's crazy. Yeah, because every time he's asked us, he tries to says the whole thing.
Yeah,
Fives was just like, it's just AZ.
I wonder if someone at Lucasfilm writing the script was like, we need a name for a droid. We need some really complicated, stupid name that no one's ever going to want to say and care about. And then the guy writing was just like on the keyboard, just like
just hitting random
bunch
buttons.
of numbers. Yeah, just a bunch of numbers. Cool, done.
Well, it was just 2 letters and then just like a billion numbers.
It's like, yeah, well, Dave walks in the room and goes like, hey, George, I'm not too sure about this name. Like, well, I've never seen it before. It looks good to me.
But maybe add a few more numbers.
Yeah, maybe a few more. I like the 7. 7's a lucky
But
number.
George, we already got like 10 numbers on this name.
We need more ones, because Phantom Menace is my favorite.
Oh, I like one.
Yeah, we kicked off this episode. It was pretty nuts because we kicked off this episode with a reorchestrated version of Finding Kamino by John Williams.
That was so cool. The music is so fitting. I love it.
It is so great. And anytime you see Kamino, you almost want to hear that tune because that's how we were introduced to Kamino in Attack of the Clones. And it's not exactly remembered to be anyone's favorite Star Wars movie. There's very few people out there which it's their absolute pinnacle favorite of all the films that have existed in the franchise. But the music by John Williams has always been consistently great through every movie that he does. And this particular song, this track, has been eminent in everything from video games all the way through to now the animated shows. And it's so iconic. This particular little track, the riff, it's just like you just instantly think that's Kamino, and it works so well. And it's almost like you've never, you hear that track, and it's like unlike anything else and there's nothing that's similar to it. It's like you just know that that's Kamino, right? Like
it's very unique, and maybe it's just because I've heard it 1,000 times watching Attack of the Clones, but it just brings up the imagery of just like overcast skies, pouring rain, and just ocean as far as you can see in every direction. Yeah, exactly. It just feels right, and to play it kind of one last time in this episode where we return to Kamino. In reference, the title is in reference to the beginning of the show, but also in reference to Attack of the Clones itself, because that was the first time that we see Kamino, and this is very likely the last. That's true, actually. So it's a really, and we'll get into a little later when we kind of go over the ending, but I thought the music at the end was also just so good, and it was emotional and sorrowful, and like we'll get into it a bit later, but this is very well could be the last time that we see this place, right? So really, every time through the episode, I just kept thinking that every time we saw anything. It was essentially an orchestral version of "Goodbye, my old friend."
Save the rebellion, save the dream.
Man, was it actually John Williams' music they used, or was it rewritten?
No, it was rewritten. Yeah, it was reorchestrated by likely Kevin Kiner, who's done the music for these shows for many years now, from the Clone Wars movie all the way to Rebels and back again to Bad Batch. Kevin Kiner's the man. He's kind of the guy that has always looked after the music. In the live action ones, they went a little more creative with their selection of composer and chose Ludwig, but I guess he'd done live action stuff before. They wanted a little higher budget, I guess, but I mean, he does a great job at the music, and he's always so good at referencing something that John Williams did and then changes it up a little bit and it kind of makes it different. And he's been doing it for forever. Yeah, we saw that quite a lot with the Force theme through the Clone Wars. Like Kevin Kiner had an interesting twist on that, and we heard it a lot when they were on Mortis, and when the music plays for Anakin's chosen one theme. Yeah, it's a bit of a twist on the classic Force theme that we normally hear, and I thought it was very cool that's kind of how they approached doing these shows. Just not only is he kind of making it his own, putting his own stamp on Star Wars, so to speak, but it also kind of gives the animated shows a unique identity as far as the musical journey that we hear as we watch these episodes. So I thought it was very cool. Did he do that here as well? Did he like alter it slightly or just extend it? Yeah, there were some notes that were, the pace was a little different, and there was different instruments used and a little smaller scale. And it just, the whole thing just felt like it was, not to say this and make it sound like it's cheap or anything, but it sounded like as if someone had listened to the John Williams track and then kind of did their own at-home version. So it always like, and that's not a bad thing. Yeah, it's like they listen to John Williams music and then they use GarageBand. Right. Yeah. No, it's not a bad thing, because I've heard some fantastic Star Wars tracks that have been done by people on YouTube and stuff, and they've digitally orchestrated their own epic version or whatever of something. And it's been great. Like, some of them are fantastic. I think there was one YouTuber named, I think his name's Sam Kim, and he does YouTube Star Wars tracks. Let me just look it up here. No, I can't find him. Okay. But yeah, look for on YouTube. You can look up Clone Wars epic track or whatever, like epic finale track. And there's a composer, and I think his name's Samuel Kim or something like that. And he's got a giant YouTube channel full of just reorchestrated versions, and a lot of them are really good. That's cool. Like, yeah, like you could totally believe that this may have come out of a show or something like that. Like they're awesome. So yeah, there's a lot of talented people out there, taking someone's work and then kind of using it as their own mock of it. Yeah, doing their own kind of mock of it, and that happens a lot in the movies. So
true.
Yeah.
Like, for example, not to go too off topic, but a lot of people don't know that the really famous Pirates of the Caribbean theme was originally a segment of a song from the movie Gladiator.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's true. So it's the first time they're in the large arena, and it's the ending of the battle where the chariots are running around Russell Crowe and his team of gladiators.
Yeah.
Da 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 da. Yeah, it was Gladiator first.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, and I mean, I don't know if any of our listeners listen to Rebel Force Radio as well. And I don't want to lose any of our listeners, but they have an amazing series on there called Star Wars Oxygen. And I've had, honestly, the best time listening to those as they break down the music of Star Wars with David W. Collins. And it was fantastic. Like, I cannot recommend it any more than saying, go listen to this on our own podcast, because, they did a great job. So
I think he also did a panel at Star Wars Celebration.
Yeah, David W. Collins is, I believe he's also a composer himself of some kind. He's a sound guy. And he's been involved in Lucasfilm related stuff for a while. So, that was something, I guess, which made him more than just enough qualified to, to present and kind of discuss his breakdowns and everything. But they're really well done. Like, every single one, like, there's like, wow, I learned so much. And I can't even remember nearly half of what I learned as I was listening. But it was just so interesting as you're listening to it. You're like, oh yeah, wow, that's so cool. And they just play the tracks, and and he has all the history of it and everything, like tiny little pieces, like even just like 5 notes in a row of a song. And it's like, oh yeah, this is a reference to like this song over here, or like this like song that John Williams was a huge fan of when he was a kid or something like that. And I'm like, dude, like, how do you know this stuff?
Yeah,
like,
it's crazy.
Did you read like 20 books on the guy?
Dude, that guy needs to like write John Williams' memoirs or something.
Yeah. I feel like, a bit of a morbid thought, but I feel like John Williams, when he dies, like, if anyone's gonna say anything at the funeral, like David W. Collins should be like one of those guys. Like, he just knows his work so well, right?
Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised, when unfortunately that time comes, that Dave W. Collins does something for StarWars.com in regards to that.
Right, exactly. Anyway. So to get back to the episode here, did you notice that the TKs at the beginning of the episode, they were keeping an eye on Crosshair? Like, immediately we start off with the premise that Crosshair can't be trusted anymore.
Interesting. No, I missed that. I got that from the other trooper and the kind of like the guys in his normal squad, like with the green lenses, because they were like straight up like implied that talking directly to their admiral. So
right, yeah, exactly. Like that's what I'm kind of referencing to. They were like, yeah, we can't, like, I don't know if he can be trusted, right? Like, that's kind of what they presented their concerns to him, and then the admiral or whatever was like, yeah, just keep an eye on him, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Okay, then yes. I thought there might have been something more subtle before that.
No, it was, but yeah, it's just always kind of, it has been a thing. Like, even in the beginning of the show, when Crosshair was first teamed up with those guys, they didn't really seem to like the idea of working under a clone trooper.
Yeah.
And so I'm not entirely surprised that they're like, yeah, we're always going to keep an eye on him.
It's very odd to me, though. Like, they clearly think clones are subhuman. Like, it's the only explanation.
Right. And this is a big discussion that I think, well, we've had before, and I've had on countless occasions with Diego when we were doing Clone Wars talk. And there's like this huge thing about the clones and whether or not, people even perceive them as human beings in the first place, because they're literally bred to die, right? And yet they're people and kind of should be respected and treated as such, but they get thrown under the bus so much because they're just lab rats, right?
They're treated more like droids.
Yeah,
than
they're
humans.
treated just like tools of war, and that's pretty much it. And with no future beyond firing a blaster.
It's funny because same when the clones have to work with droids, they don't trust them.
Yeah.
Because they think they could be betrayed at any moment, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And in all fairness, I mean, these clones have inhibitor chips in their brains. I mean, if I was working with a guy who could turn on his trusted allies in an instant with one command, I'd be a little concerned.
Fair enough.
So, I mean, later on in the episode, when he brings up the fact that his chip has possibly been removed, I'm like, oh, this is an interesting discussion.
Yeah, that was very surprising because I've been expecting for a while now that they were going to remove his chip and then everything be all hunky dory. But maybe he just is naturally a psychopath. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a bit strange because he said that his chip had been removed a long time ago. Yeah, and I'm sure it was during that accident when he got burned by the engines from the Republic cruiser. Yeah, that's a possibility that he just got so much damage on his head that maybe when they were putting him back together again, that they just had to take it out because it was fried or something like that. Like, who knows, right? More
likely during the operation, he got them to do it, like got the droid or whatever to do it.
Yeah, here's the other alternative is that because I know Hunter inspected him for a scar and I don't think there was one. Like at least I didn't see one. So
I looked pretty close at that too. It's hard to tell because it's already so much scar tissue.
Yeah, it's possible that he was just lying. And here's the other thing. Because my suspicion, I brought this up before on the show. My suspicion is that kind of like the thrown away script of episode 9 for Kylo Ren, just kind of driving himself further into darkness and never coming back from it. My suspicion was that he would just remain an enemy forever and that he would just kind of die believing differently than the rest of them. Right. Right. And whether this is part of the chip's fault or not, if he's saying he doesn't have it and he doesn't, maybe he isn't like the rest of them, right? Like maybe he really truly believes differently about the Empire, much like these humans that voluntarily sign up.
It's totally possible.
Right? Yeah.
Oddly enough, probably is the biggest twist.
Yeah.
Because we've all been led to believe it's the chip the whole time, right?
Right. And here's the thing about that. Because before the chip, I don't know what your thoughts were on this, but when episode 3 first came out, and Order 66 was issued, I always thought that, the clones were bad from the start. Like this was all planned and all the clones knew about this plan before Order 66 was given. And when the order was given,
that was the original story.
The order, right? Yeah. And this was kind of, that was the thing.
To prove that in the original Star Wars Battlefront, I think it's Battlefront 2, you play through the game as a 501st.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
They allude because you kind of play through it in chronological order as stuff's happening, and they talk about like helping certain Jedi. I think it's I'm blanking on her name, but
it was Kiadi Mundi on Seleucami or something. It was some sort of line.
The Twi'lek with the 2 lightsabers.
I vaguely remember what you're talking about, but it was Tamura Morrison was doing all the voiceovers for the campaign, and it was like all the cutscenes and all that stuff. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Anyway, there's an a campaign level on Felucia where you help her, and at the end they talk about how they feel bad that they know what's coming.
Yeah,
before it happens.
Yeah.
So they were very much aware that Order 66 was a thing that was going to happen at some point.
Right. So the thing is, and this is kind of my thought process, because we've all been led to believe now that that's, according to Clone Wars, that these chips have been implemented. And to me, actually, it made more sense that we have these chips, because after seeing the Clone Wars and seeing like literally the brotherhood between these clones and some of the Jedi and everything like that, like Anakin's relationship with Rex and all that, I would think to myself as well that like these these aren't bad people. Like they're like a lot of these clones are really like honest men that are willing to help people. And I think about that Ryloth arc in Clone Wars with Waxer and Boyle when they helped the little Twi'lek girl. Mm-hmm. And I think like, man, like people who are plotting to turn against their own republic and their own side would not be spending any time of day on this little lost girl trying to find her parents, right?
It's true. They'd be more like machines.
Yeah, exactly. Or even just straight up evil men, right? And just like, funny. I don't care about this person. Like,
yeah, it's funny how they modified the clones, but they didn't remove their emotions like that.
Yeah. Well, they're all still got to be like a little bit like Django, right? But they are kind of there are good guys, and so these chips, at least for me, helped kind of believe why they would, and it almost made it more sad because it didn't give them a choice anymore. True. It took away their chance to really. Not only have the Kaminoans taken away their chance to live a normal life by giving them growth enhancements and whatever else and throwing them on the front lines with a gun with all the training they need to just die for people in a war that makes no sense to them at all.
It's true.
But beyond that, they don't have a choice when Order 66 is given and now they've got to shoot the people that they've been trying to defend this entire time. Like, it's terrible. Like, this entire thing is just so miserable. And like, so the chips for me made it even like... more sad, right? Like more sad, right? And anytime I watch Revenge of the Sith now, it's like forever changed because of that. And so this is a very interesting twist. If Crosshair's chip is removed, it really kind of brings it back to that initial idea of like, oh, some of the clones once upon a time before the Clone Wars came out, we always thought that they did have a choice. Like when that order was given and a lot of them just shoot the Jedi down, was there clones that decided not to make that decision. And in the Republic Commando novels that we once read, that actually had come up at one point.
Yeah, because originally the story, as we mentioned, was they all knew it was coming. They worked with the Jedi, but didn't see them as friend or anything. They knew it was going to happen. Then the storyline actually changed in the novels to the original clones for like Geonosis were well trained. They became attached to the Jedi, but as they died out, they were replaced by new clones that had different training and were more in line with the Republic and not the Jedi. And they were used to exterminate. And so there were some clones that chose not to because they've been around through the whole war, but they were vastly outnumbered by these new clones that had no affiliation to the Jedi.
Right. Yeah, it's a crazy thing. And, it makes me wonder, I'm just so eager to see this next episode to find out whether or not his chip really is removed. Because I'm sure that, Tech has that little scanner thing that can detect it now. So it really won't take them too long to figure it out. But they kind of cut us off at the point where we don't know if he's lying. So
they also have to escape Kamino first.
They do. Right? Yeah, they do. Speaking of escaping Kamino, they entered Kamino, and I assume they'll exit Kamino through this underwater tube system.
Yeah.
Which is a new part of Kamino that we'd never seen before. And it had me wonder, I was like, man, this thing connects to a secret platform that goes directly to a secret private research lab.
Yeah, I know.
Does this not scream Palpatine or what?
Yeah, that's a good point. Obviously, you can see why they got along with Palp so well, right?
Yeah, it's like, I mean, I've always wondered how he paid his visits, and now I kind of know, right? Like, it's like, oh, they've got a whole secret underwater elevator system going on, like that nobody saw or knew about. Even in the Clone Wars, when Tipoca City was attacked, I don't believe we ever saw any underwater tubes when Kenobi was down there fighting off droids and everything. Like, it was...
That's actually a good point. I'm surprised then that the Separatists didn't come across them and take advantage of them.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't in the plans, and Tech actually says that it's not in the plans to the city that this is a thing, right? So, we're not intended to know about any of this until now, and it just makes me wonder, like, dude, what was this for? Like, I mean, like, now that Kamino is kind of gone, it's like, are we even going to find out? Like, I hope so, because like, it's kind of sweet that this private research lab has a private elevator to a private landing pad. I mean, I think that's kind of cool, right? It just kind of it's a bit sinister.
It is. It makes it so that they can do a lot of stuff off the books, off record. I wonder if that has to do with the fact that, because I don't know if this is canon anymore, but at one point it was canon that there were laws around cloning. So you couldn't just mass produce an army. And they lifted those laws only for the Kaminoans, for the Republic, because they needed them. But other than that, there was like a ban on cloning, except for under certain circumstances, like the race would die out, right?
Yeah.
So that all the stuff being hidden could give them the ability to do it off the books and do lots of experiments and all sorts of things that wouldn't be under the law.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know that makes sense. To me, I think I like to even speculate that this platform was developed for. Well, we know that Nala Se was breeding Clone Force 99 and Omega in that private laboratory, because Omega says that that's where they were born.
Speaking of which, she was born before them.
Yeah. Pretty crazy, right?
Yeah, to think about it. And not only was she born before them, but she was born and cognizant enough of an age to remember it.
Yeah, she was. Yeah, she remembers when Clone Force 99 was created, right? So it's kind of nuts to think that and we've already had this discussion about Omega and her age when certain events had happened in the past and this and that in earlier episodes of the show, but yeah, to go back to this place again and just to see her reminisce about these events when she was younger, which, is about 3 years prior kind of thing, because the Clone Wars is about that long. And she's, I don't know, she's what, like 12 or
so I guess
something like that. So
she would have been like 8 or 9 or something.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. So she does remember, because it was only 3 years prior.
Well, the clones, their growth acceleration is only ×2.
Yeah, it's only ×2. But of course, like, I don't know how long they spend in that tank, and then of course they grow up very quickly afterwards. So it kind of makes me wonder, though. It's a bit curious that they don't remember Omega when they were young, because you would think that they would have all been kept together, but I guess not.
I think they were in the tanks.
Yeah. While
she saw them, and then when they were old enough to go out of the tank, they sent them off. Yeah.
It's really curious, and I don't know if maybe the original plan never called for a mutant batch of clones. Like, maybe it was something that was a bit off the books in a way. But I like to think that this private platform and underwater tunnel system, because she actually did. Omega said that there's others that run through Kamino.
Yeah.
And I like to think that this underwater system was definitely something that was used for Dooku and Palps and possibly even Cypodius.
It makes sense, yeah.
When they first ordered the clone army. Like, maybe they were told, like, hey, we got a setup for you in the back.
Down below.
Yeah. Platform on platform -0 or something like that. I don't know.
There we go. Which is still 0.
Yeah. Water level. This training arena keeps showing up.
I know. It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
It's like every few episodes it comes back.
Every few seasons since season 3, it just keeps on showing up again. But I like seeing it. It's pretty cool.
I think that scene now has the record for the fastest amount of time from them telling Omega to stay back in case they need help, and then being captured and needing help.
Yeah, it's a new record.
Yeah.
And then her doing something to like screw everything up. Of course.
Which is funny. That one thing I noticed is because like she sends up the droids to help them.
Yeah.
And they've already, because Crosshair like killed all of his men in one shot, the like reflection shot there.
Yeah, and he planned that too. He put those little reflector things down and totally planned that shot. So it's.
I think he could tell they didn't trust him, and so because you noticed totally that they were already skeptical of him, and he gave them an order that he knew they wouldn't obey.
Yeah, he wanted a reason to kill them all.
Exactly.
So he could earn the others trust again, right? And try and bring them over to the Empire.
Exactly. But what I was getting at is with the droids, it ended up being a bit of a Mr. Bean moment because they sent up the droids to save the Bad Batch, but they were already saved. And that caused problems for all of them. And they got up to, like, Omega and AZ got to the upper floor, and they thought that their droids were successful, even though they didn't do anything except shoot their own guys. But then the other trooper came in and assumed the droids killed them anyway. So it actually worked out. Yeah.
I actually really liked seeing after all those other, I don't even know what to call them, the human elite clone, the elites, the green visored.
Yeah, they have like Kashyyyk armor for some reason.
Yeah, they've got I don't even know what to call that group, but Crosshair's people. When they all went down and the droids came out, I thought it was really cool seeing them kind of unify again to fight against the common enemy, which was droids. Like, you know, and a year before the events of this episode, they were all fighting together agast the droids in the first place.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah, good point.
So
I didn't think about the droids.
This was quite a unifying moment for them, and they kind of very quickly went back into their roots of fighting as a proper squad again, and they had a few shots to kind of display that. I thought that was pretty neat. Like,
yeah, I mean, it makes sense because they did that for 3 years. They're just gonna fall into the same rhythms.
Yeah, exactly, and they kill all those droids like so swiftly.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder if they would have been more competent in other episodes if they had their full crew, because that means they are so used to having that one extra person that they probably got into trouble because that extra person would have been covering their backs in certain moments.
Yeah. Crosshair added a lot, right? Like he's, their scout sniper guy. Like he was a heavy hitter. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That covers a lot of the general stuff. There's a few more things I actually wanted to bring up. The big one being Tipoca City bombarded. What did you think of this?
I first of all was gobsmacked that you called it like throughout the entire last episode. And once I got past that, I was actually a little bit sad because we've come Kamino's like a home to a lot of these clones on these characters that we really like, and we assumed that something had to happen because it doesn't exist, or we never even hear about it during like the Empire era. But even that being the case, it was sad to watch it all, go into the ocean.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is a city and a location that we've seen a numerous amount of times, and very nostalgic for us as viewers of who do love Attack of the Clones and those episodes of the Clone Wars. Kevin Kiner did an amazing job on the music, ending off Tipoca City when the whole thing went and got blown up, basically. And I'd love to play a little piece of that just right now. You see all the shots of the mess hall, where they're created, the bedrooms.
Sir, we're in position.
Open fire.
Hurry! Get to the lift! Back inside! Go!
Tragedy is just so real.
I thought that was really well done, those shots. I wasn't expecting that at all. That was very cinematic.
Totally cinematic, yeah. And they brought in Tarkin's line, "You may fire when ready."
Yeah, right?
So good. But it's just it's such a great little like, I don't know, a little a sad moment. It's very sorrowful.
It is. Yeah,
it's emotional.
There's a lot of emotion in it. And if I didn't know better, I could consider that John Williams music. Like, there's enough passion in it.
It was so full. Yeah, absolutely. It was so full, and it just filled the note that I wrote down was, it's emotional, sorrowful, as their only home that they ever knew is blown to hell.
Yeah,
like that's what I wrote down, and it's so it brings me back to that Clone Wars arc when Rex and pretty much all the clones are going home to Kamino, the only home that they've ever known. And they're defending it against the droid armies that are invading to get the clone DNA, right? And I think there was a line that was thrown around by, I think it was Fives or somebody. I think it was either Fives or Echo, and it was something along the lines of like that. This is our home, and like my blood is boiling for a fight, you know. And they were just so like passionate and angry that these droids would step foot on their planet and like take their city and their home, and you know, and it's like, man, like to like then now see it just be blown to pieces after being decommissioned and clones being, you know, tossed into retirement and out of production and being replaced and everything. Like, geez, like this is really sad. Like, and only a couple months or a year after they had their only choice taken away from them, so they had to kill their own friends they'd been serving under for, you know, 3 years. Like they just can't catch a break.
It's true. Could you imagine if like the rest of the clones are in the right mind when all this was going down? Like they would be absolutely furious.
Yeah.
And to think that it was clones aboard those Republic cruisers that hit the guns.
Yeah. Yeah, that too, for sure. I'm sure there was clones above there.
We saw them. The guy he was talking to was a clone.
That's nuts. Yeah, like I mean, and here's the thing, like because I didn't actually pay attention to that clone's face. Like, did he look like he had any kind of doubt in his mind, or was he still on autopilot?
No. Yeah, he just looked like, this is my job, this is what I do, and no emotional attachment.
Yeah. Yeah. See, like and I'm pretty sure that's the chip that's kind of going in his brain that's just totally keeping him that way, right?
It would have to be. Or I could also see that so much bad has already happened that a lot of clones have just become emotionless.
Yeah,
like they don't know what to believe in anymore.
Right. And you know, this also brings kind of Hauser's decision into the question of like, how did he get his men to turn against the Empire when the inhibitor chip is supposed to keep them loyal, right? And kind of on autopilot and emotionless and this and that. So I don't know. There's a lot of questions there with how effective are these things, and do they last? And you know, are some of the clones really at this point making their own decisions and following orders because they want to? Because like Crosshair believes the Empire gives them purpose, or you know, are some of them cluing into the fact that the Empire is just evil? They don't really care to fight for them anymore, and they're just kind of done, right? So,
well, I feel like it might be similar to like Nazi Germany. It's like a lot of the soldiers that originally signed up, they didn't know what they were getting into, and they just after they were exposed to evil after evil after evil, they just kind of shut off their own personal beliefs or thoughts. They just followed orders, right?
Right. Yeah. But at first they were all brainwashed, right?
That's exactly it.
So it's a very similar situation. And, you know, we know that Star Wars has always had this tradition of basing itself in reality in a way. And that's kind of what makes any of this fictional story somewhat believable in an in-universe sort of standpoint, because including the ships, the design of a lot of the ships has come inspired from real world military technology, and a lot of the guns and everything like that. It just goes in fashion with the way that these movies were made.
True.
And based on ever since 1977, and even the events of the story have always been, at least according to George, like in relation to real world wars that have happened.
Yeah, and George Lucas himself was a farm boy in the middle of nowhere and rose up to be his Death Star of Hollywood.
Yeah, right, exactly. So, and the Empire is very, very closely associated with Nazi Germany. So it's not too far fetched to think that the transition of these clones and the journey that they're currently going through is supposed to be reminiscent of perhaps that event, right?
Yeah, I think that's most likely what Dave's going for through all this.
Yeah,
because
he
knew what George had set up, right? So
right.
He was playing into that.
Right, exactly.
I got a question for you.
Yes.
So at the beginning of the episode, when they're flying into Topoka City, or flying into Kamino because they're still in orbit, I think it's Wrecker. He points out, there's only 3 Republic cruisers. I wonder where the rest are.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they said that, meaning that the other ones are up to something, probably going to be revealed next episode. What do you think they're doing?
No, totally, 100%. I think there's something up with that. It's possible that maybe all the Star Destroyers are in a, I don't know. We're going to find out. That's for sure. We're going to find out.
I wonder if they're all blowing up different facilities.
Oh, yeah, maybe. Well, at least as far as we know, the only cloning facility that's still in commission is on Kamino, because we did come across an out of commission facility on another planet, but clearly wasn't breeding clones because it was breeding some other species in there.
Yeah, but it doesn't necessarily have to be like cloners. They could be blowing up other groups that worked with the Republic during the war and might pose a threat to the Empire.
Yeah, totally. Blowing up some of the ally planets that the Empire doesn't care for anymore, or just planets that were leeches, and they're like, screw them, like forget it. Who knows, right? Like they're just going through this massive transition period, and this series is supposed to bring us from the Clone Wars that we know. This is a very important moment in time because, like Rebels aside, when we start with the events of Rogue One and A New Hope, we see this very kind of battle-scarred planet or planets and of times long past, right? And this era now is referred to as the Dark Times by Obi-Wan Kenobi, and there's a reason for that, right?
Sure.
And this kind of is that transition of this great war, the biggest war that the galaxy had ever seen, into this very depressing, dark age of misery that everyone in the galaxy was going through. And there's events that obviously transpired that will present itself as a plot in this show. And again, Kevin Kiner, brilliant guy. Take a listen to this little clip here. This is how he ends off the episode after Kamino is like blown up and everything like that. Isn't that depressing?
It's very depressing.
It's kind of eerie as well.
You keep saying exactly what I'm thinking. Like I could see this music also being really fitting to this scene where Darth Vader discovers the dead 501st troopers and finds Ahsoka's lightsabers in the snow.
Yeah, it has that vibe to it for sure. It really reminds me of the battle on Mandalore and the music that Bryce actually referred to as very Blade Runner style.
Okay.
Or a kind of very, not sci-fi, but very like, I don't know, a dark space fantasy or something. Like it's just a really, really edgy vibe to it.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, because Blade Runner the original film was it was an eerie, dark detective movie, right? So
yeah, like it feels kind of edgy. Yeah. So almost like something really terrible is going to happen. Not that like, and something already terrible has happened, but like it feels like the next episode isn't going to leave us off on a overly great note, right?
I wonder if maybe they did reference it because the Blade Runner movie, the first one, was about like clones and like genetically created humans, and if they are real people or not.
Yeah, no, that's a great point actually. Yeah. The music is just so reminiscent of that movie, and or just that style of storytelling in a space story. But it was just a really good way to end off the end credits. It was, I expected something like that rather than the you know.
Could you imagine just cuts to something like real cheery?
Yeah.
That'd be hilarious.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, everyone just dies. Everything's exploding.
Right.
Then,
They seem to.
Oh wait, wrong franchise.
They seem to have a good hold on how to edit these things, because when Ahsoka left the Jedi Order, they played a very sorrowful, sad tune. They did the same for the end of Clone Wars season 7. They did something very similar for I believe it was season 6 at some point. I think it was in the Yoda series, the Yoda arc, or maybe it was one of the other ones. But they did a really good job in some of the episodes where it doesn't end on that, like, classic Clone Wars tune. And that's something that I vaguely remember Rebels ever doing that.
No, Rebels was very upbeat. It's funny that you bring it up, because I was just picturing in my head like sad destruction. Everything's all like really disheartening, and then
yeah, every time, man, every time. It was for a younger audience, so maybe they just didn't want to make it as depressing.
Could be,
but who knows?
I'm looking at a recording here. We timed that pretty good.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
I bet you it's completely inaudible.
Oh man, it's like straight out of the show.
I think
no one's gonna tell.
Skywalker Sound's probably gonna hire us. Save them a lot of effort. And
you hear that, Matthew
composing.
Wood? You hear that, Matthew Wood? We can. Yeah, we'll fill in.
We're available.
We'll be like their temp music people. It'll be so good they don't need to hire Kevin Kiner anymore.
No, we just do it all ourselves.
We're gonna take his job now.
Pew 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 pew. See, pretty good. Expect a call. That's what I'm saying. Actually, one thing that I found really disappointing was that the title kind of gave away a bit what was going to happen.
Return to Kamino.
I know. And then it's funny because like the first like cliffhanger is, wait, they're not on Raxus Prime. And then Omega's like, where are they? And then like cuts. I'm like, well, obviously it's Kamino. And then it was Kamino.
Yeah. They kind of gave it away in the title, but I don't know. I sort of expected we'd be going back to Kamino, but at the same time, it's like, at least it's not a death of Qui-Gon thing. Okay. I know we tell the story a lot, but let's just do it again, just so that people know. So like when the Phantom Menace came out, the soundtrack dropped about a week or two early before the movie. And one of the tracks on the soundtrack is naturally called The Death of Qui-Gon and Funeral or something like that.
Yeah, funeral scene.
And it's just like the most obvious spoiler ever. So anyone who lined up at HMV or wherever to pick up their CD,
which came out before the theatrical release.
Yeah. Or their cassette tapes or whatever. They would just right away, they would know like, oh, no, man. Just go into the movie with this super intense fight scene, still one of the best that Star Wars movies have ever given, and they know what's gonna happen.
It's true.
It's like that would suck, man. Like I don't know.
Disappointing.
That would be the worst. But yeah.
Well, at the same time, I guess you want to see how it happens, but
yeah. Oh, of course. And the fight's always good. I mean, I've seen that fight probably 100 times and I still like watching it.
That's true, actually. The set's amazing. I love what they did there.
Good. It's so good.
That room's not practical in any way whatsoever, but it makes for a cool Jedi fight area.
Yeah, it really does. It really does.
It's like the ultimate like no guardrails room.
Right.
It's just like drawbridges in every direction with no guardrails.
Are we if we're wrapped up on Bad Batch, I wouldn't mind transitioning us onto one more subject for today.
Well, I wouldn't mind if we speculated a
yeah.
bit about what's happening in the next episode. Like, how do you think this is going to end? There's only one episode left.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah, let's call some shots. Let's start with you. What do you think is going to happen in the next episode?
Well, my first question is, was Crosshair lying or not? Because it could be that someone told him it was removed and it wasn't. But I think they're going to find out that it was removed, but the Empire thinks he's dead and they're not going to take it back. So he's going to be forced to be on the run with the rest of them. And then by the end, he's going to like work out. Something's going to happen that's going to make him realize the truth.
Right. Yeah, I see where you're going with that. I could buy that.
But AZ is there, so AZ is going to have to do something. I'm sure of it.
Yeah, and here's the other thing. I don't know. Maybe AZ will just become part of their crew and replace Echo as their droid.
Or just replace Gonky.
Replace Gonky. You cannot replace Gonky.
Gonk.
He's an essential member of the team.
Gonk.
Yeah, I would not be surprised if if we saw Rex again. And Gregor,
Speaking of which, where did he go?
He's off world. That's all we know, and we don't know where. We don't know what he's doing, but we know that Gregor needed some rescuing from where he was, and was still in touch with Rex somehow.
Kind of a dick move, though. Where it's like Bad Batch shows up to rescue him, and then they lose a guy, and he's like, "Well, see ya, thanks."
Yeah,
and leave them to figure it out.
It's true. Yeah, there was a. Yeah, there was a bit of a...
How cool would it have been if they kept Gregor and he like found the rest of his kit, was on the full like commando gear there with them?
That'd be pretty awesome.
Right? The wasted opportunity with commandos left, right, and center.
It really is. I wouldn't be surprised if we had maybe some crazy cameo from a character that hasn't shown up yet. I mean, I know we speculated on the whole Cad Bane Boba thing showing up, but maybe something like that, or it's possible that it's possible. I don't know. Let's just I'm throwing a bone out there, but maybe we'll get Obi-Wan showing up in the series. Like, who knows?
Din Djarin.
Din Djarin, sure, yeah, young kid, Din Djarin, maybe someone from Mandalore, yeah, Bo-Katan. Bo-Katan's a likely candidate.
It's true, actually.
Yeah, I mean, technically, I wouldn't be surprised if the event that is talked about by Moff Gideon of the purge or whatever that happened on Mandalore, I wouldn't be surprised if we maybe got that in this show.
Do you think it's that early after Order 66?
I think it's a very possible outcome. Maybe for a later season, like next season. Not crammed in this last episode, but I'm just kind of thinking of like what they could do in this next one to set up the next season.
I feel like it's more likely to happen in the Obi-Wan Kenobi live action because he's got ties directly to Mandalore.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
So with that being such a cool event, I think they would save that for live action.
Right. What are the chances that maybe we'll get a Jedi who's still alive, like from the Order 66 showing up as well?
Jedi Luke when he's like 2. Even though I think he's like 6 months at this point.
I don't know the full list of the surviving Jedi, but he there is a small list of them, and I know that one of them has more recently shown up in one of the latest Darth Vader comic books, I believe.
Okay.
So they're still running around out there.
There's a
And,
few, yeah.
you know, and of course now at this point, we probably have the Inquisitors as a thing.
Yeah, I guess some transition, so they don't have to train them.
Yeah.
Because they were Jedi.
Like at some point, we're going to probably have Inquisitors showing up. I would not be surprised. Even if it's just like a cameo.
I think that's season 2 thing. But then again, it could be like this episode, which is at the end of the season.
That's
like
what I'm
twist.
saying. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like what kind of cameo are we going to get for the next season that's going to like hook us into season 2? Because
Oh, shit. Darth Vader.
Darth Vader. Oh, yeah. Maybe Darth Vader. Yeah.
It could be Darth Vader.
Darth Vader or Palpatine. I know on the poster, Palpatine's hologram was very kind of prominently in the background. Like, unless that was just for the pilot, you know, it's possible that we'll get him in there.
Man,
somehow.
how cool would it be if Darth Vader showed up though?
That would be really awesome. Yeah,
He just showed up, just
really
like
cool.
brought some fear and kicking ass.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's kind of my speculation on the next one. I honestly have no idea from here where it's gonna go. I think you're right about the ships. We're gonna get something in regards to that.
I bet you it'll be a Ryloth that gets blown up.
Ryloth. Oh, yeah, but Ryloth is still around by the time of you know the following stories.
Well, they'll blow up the whole planet. They could destroy a city.
Right. Yeah, they could destroy city. Yeah, they could destroy the capital maybe of Lesu. Actually, I don't know. I vaguely remember Lesu being in. I think it's called Lesu.
Rebels. I think.
I vaguely remember Lesu being in the Lords of the Sith book, which took place on Ryloth with Vader and Palpatine.
Yeah, we've talked about that. When Darth Vader's fixing children's toys and Palpatine's like singing music with kids or something.
Yeah, around a fire pit. Yeah, that was pretty funny.
Who wrote that book?
I think it was Paul. It was Paul something or another. I'm pretty sure.
I'm impressed, but you know that.
Lords of the Sith. Let's look this up. Paul S. Kemp. Paul S. Kemp. Paul S. Kemp has also written. He's written a couple books actually. He wrote. He did write a short story called Sparks in the Certain Point of View book, and he had a canceled novel, which I have no idea what that is. Prior to the canon stuff, he wrote Riptide, A Fair Trade, The Old Republic Deceived, The Old Republic, The Third Lesson, and Cross Current. So he wrote all those things, 2 of which are short stories. So he's done a few Star Wars books, like 3.
Yeah.
Before Lords of the Sith. Yeah.
Still, I don't know. I still don't know how I feel about that scene.
Yeah, it almost feels like it was written by someone who
like
maybe doesn't fully know the characters.
Yeah, I mean, on one hand, it was funny because it was a little bit. It was out of place, but in kind of a kooky way.
I think the weirdness of the entire novel is seeing Palpatine just on a mission by like himself, right?
True.
Like on doing anything himself is always a little like, oh wow. But I didn't feel that way when he showed up on Mandalore to kill Savage Opress and Maul, right? Like
no.
I thought that was very much in character to kind of like, okay, the only person that can fix this problem is me. I'm gonna just go and do it, right? And he does it, and so like I can buy that. But the events of that novel for me were just like
it had something to do with training Darth Vader, didn't it?
They crash landed on Ryloth, and it had something to do with Cham Syndulla. That's what I remember.
I love how anything to do with that planet automatically has to do with Syndullas.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
It's the only ones that matter.
We should very briefly bring up the recent passing of J.W. Rinzler. Did you read about this?
No, it's the first I've heard of it.
So the Lucasfilm family is heartbroken at the news of Jonathan Rinzler's recent passing. During his long tenure with the company, Jonathan served as an executive editor with Lucasfilm Publishing. Telling our story in more than a dozen books of scholarship, clarity, and passion, his making of Star Wars and Indiana Jones books are beloved resources that both we and fans have continuously turned to for information and inspiration. He will be missed. He died at the age of, I believe it was 58, 2 days ago.
It's actually pretty young.
Yeah, he was suffering an 11-month battle with pancreatic cancer. And he leaves behind a wife and a few kids, so he will be missed. And he was friends with I believe was with George, and had worked on a number of Star Wars books, like a number of them. We're talking about everything from reference books from I believe his first one was Attack of the Clones: The Visual Dictionary, all the way through till the canceled Making of the Force Awakens reference book.
Oh, wow.
And everything in between. The storyboard books, the blueprints, that big, thick book with all the blueprints.
Yeah, I was just going to ask. Was he involved in the one that you got, the super thick one?
No, he wasn't involved with that one, but some of the information that was obviously referenced by the author of those books were likely...
pulled.
Yeah. I mean, J.W. Rinzler he didn't write just regular Star Wars books. He wrote everything that had to do with real world reference books for the in-universe, as well as art books. So anything Star Wars titled behind the scenes prior and around 2014 all the way back to 2002. He wrote or was an editor of some kind on those things. And he also even wrote 2 Clone Wars episodes. He was the writer of The Disappeared Part 1 and 2, which is the ones with Jar Jar and Mace Windu. When they're helping
I know
out.
what you're talking about.
Yeah, he wrote the scripts for those. And I forget the story behind it, but I believe it was... That
was one of the better Jar Jar episodes.
Yeah, it was. It really was, and I forget the story exactly, but I'm pretty sure that he was just chatting with either Dave or George or someone, and they just were like, "Hey, you should write some episodes," and they just
that's pretty cool.
I'm glad. Yeah,
I'm glad they did that.
Yeah. I got a quote from Dave Filoni here. He said. It says, his writing credits include penning the 2-part arc that disappeared for season 6 of Star Wars: The Clone Wars. And Dave says, I knew Jonathan as a writer and was fortunate to work with him on 2 episodes of The Clone Wars. His making of Star Wars books are the most in-depth accounting of the films I've ever seen. And I'm sure his work will be to the benefit of generations of filmmakers to come. And in that, he has fulfilled one of the greatest tenets of the Jedi, to pass on what you've learned, something Jonathan did brilliantly. So
well said.
Yeah.
And very true, because those films are just getting farther and farther away. So we really rely on the people who did that, the first initial books talking about everything, to keep that information alive.
Yeah, for sure. His Twitter account's still active. I believe his daughter's Judith and Sarah, and he's got a wife, Genevieve, but his daughter Sarah took her father's Twitter into her own hands and was sending his followers updates in his final days. And in just 48 hours, a GoFundMe page was created to help with medical expenses, which I'm pretty sure they're probably still in need of paying those off. So if anyone wants to look that up and toss them some coin, I'm sure the family would be much appreciated. He is a legend in the author of over 20 Star Wars books and a legend within Lucasfilm. So he will be missed.
It's a very sad loss.
Yeah, for sure. I remember seeing so many Star Wars books on the shelf with his writer's credit on the cover. So. Yeah, pretty shocking, to say the least. Other than that, I don't really know what else to bring up. I mean, we've got the Bad Batch chat next week, and once the season's over, There's a bit of a rough plan to chat with a few others about this season in retrospect, and kind of do a full speculation on what's to come. So we can look forward to that, as well as a lot more what happened episodes, which we'll kind of get back to fill some of the time as we've got no more Bad Batch past next Friday. So
to go back to reading the novels.
Exactly. Yeah. We'll get around to that High Republic stuff very soon. So, and
I'm sure people are very excited for our 2002 Star Wars Bounty Hunter review for PlayStation.
Yeah, the trick is to get our hands on a copy and a PlayStation 2. All right, guys, thanks so much for tuning into the show. And like Blake was saying before, we got lots of content coming your way on the podcast, including reviews for the new High Republic books, as well as old vintage video games, and so much more. We got a lot of What Happened episodes. We got episodes about the Force powers. Lots of stuff coming your way now that Bad Batch is coming to a close. And of course, beyond Bad Batch, we've got the Book of Boba Fett coming out later this year. So many things to follow in the Star Wars story. And of course, for your regular updates, you can always follow our Twitter feed at SWScape Podcast. And of course, the Star Wars Twitter feed. Twitter's just great. Twitter's great. You get updates every day. It's unlike anything else. It's awesome. We also got an Instagram page now as well. We're still trying to figure that out. And a website, email at swskpodcast@gmail.com. It's all in the description below, including a link to our voicemail address. Feel free to just drop a voicemail. It's easy as clicking a record button, sending in your voice memo. You can even send us it by email. And we'd love to hear your thoughts on the Bad Batch finale. We're going to be doing a big group chat, retrospective, speculation on Season 2. We'd love to know what you guys think of this past season, as well as what your thoughts are for the next season. So feel free to send in any kind of recording, and we'd love to play it on the show as well, along with our own speculation. And you're very welcome to do that. So thanks again for tuning in, guys. Lots more coming your way. Look for more light speeds in the future for Star Wars news. And may the Force be with you.